Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And today I just want to get into a topic that recently I've been just having discussions with some like friends and whatnot about, which is how the times have changed, which you obviously know in terms of the way we can consume media, but just kind of more reminiscing on the way that it used to be in the 80s, the 90s, and maybe even the early 2000s, where things were a lot more hands-on and a lot more slower paced in terms of the way that we digested media. And so jumping into it, in the grand scheme of things, the way we digest media now has made media less satisfying, along with less memorable, and with the ability to have things instantly, the duration of how long we enjoy that media is very short-lived as well. So we have, back in the days, we used to have things like Blockbuster, we used to have things like Sam Goody, and it was a full experience. You'd go into the store for like a Blockbuster, you're looking to see if any games that you want to get, movies you want to rent, and whatever the case is, and it'd be a whole experience. You'd pick up the game, or even if you were purchasing the game at a store, and you would purchase that game, you go home with it back in the days when you were young, and you would take time to try to beat the game, see all aspects of the game, really try to you would dive into that game head first, and you'd be playing it for like weeks or whatever the case is, even if you beat it early, because that used to always be a thing too when you were young. You'd come to school the next day, you talk about the game, who bought this game, because it was almost like an event. The same way with a movie, the same thing with anything, it was almost an event to be a part of something. So it was like, with a game, you'd be like, I beat it in 2 days, or I beat it in 3 days. And you'd still keep playing it because it was like just an event that lasted you maybe a good, several months of enjoyment, but not just for your own self, but sharing that with other people that you knew who were also experiencing the same thing. Same with movies. You'd go to see a movie, you'd talk about it with your friends, you'd ask who's seen it, you'd have references to the movie in which like you almost felt like you were part of a secret code or a club because you knew things about the movie that other people who didn't see it didn't know about. And even during those times with the movies, because you couldn't have access to the movie unless you saw it in the movie theaters, it didn't go to streaming service. It didn't go to, DVD right away or whatever the case is. And back then you even had VHS in like the 80s and the 90s. It would be like a movie would be in the movie theaters for probably roughly about 6 months to like maybe like 8 months. It was actually in the movie theaters. Then it would go maybe about, I would say almost a good, after the time it leaves the movie theaters, it'd be almost about a year and a half after it left that movie theaters. So maybe in total about 2.5 years, 2 years to 2.5 years, that it would come on VHS, and you'd have to wait for it. So you knew if you didn't go see it in the movie theaters, you weren't going to be able to see it for at least another year and a half on tape. So you were like, you know what, like I have to go see this. And it became a big event, like I said, and because that was the only way to see it anytime soon, you knew you were part of like almost like a little clique or a little club. Like, I seen this movie, did you see it yet? Oh man, it was awesome, X, Y, and Z. And it gave this long lasting feeling, plus your memory too. Your memory had to, one thing that they've spoken about when it comes to say like taking pictures, they say like we don't remember the moment as much because now we know we have the ability to take pictures. Our mind says, I don't need to catalog that because I took a picture of it or several pictures of it, and I don't need to remember the moment because I'm going to remember it based on the photo. And I believe that we do that as well when it comes to even consuming media. If we know that it's going to be on streaming in a couple of weeks from the time that it comes out in the movie theaters, we don't have to remember the moment. We may not even see it in the movie theaters, but even if we do, we may not take the time to remember the moment that deeply because we go, oh, in a couple of weeks, I'll just stream it. So that will refresh my memory. And part of that memory was talking about it with your friends over and over again. Yo, remember that scene when blah, blah, and you keep talking about it, which enhanced your memory, enhanced the enjoyability of it. So that was definitely a thing. And when it came to music too, back in the days, you bought a cassette tape back then, at least during the era where it was more like, I would say mobile and spread out. You're coming from records and you're coming in the 80s and 90s to like cassette tapes. And then you had CDs too, but you still were in that era of cassette tapes and CDs, a little bit of both. And, you'd go to like a Sam Goody or one of these kind of record stores. Empire Records, I believe, was one of them. And you would go around, you look through, you'd have the headphones, you could test out some of the music. They put so much work into the box art of the cassette tape or the CD, and it was an experience. And then afterwards, when you listen to it, you'd tell your friends, yo, I got that new album. You're listening to it. You would digest an album for probably like about a good 6 months to 8 months of just listening to the same album over and over again. And everyone else around you were doing the same. And it was just this whole vibe, this experience, and you're sharing it and you're like into it and you're singing the songs, you're remembering all the words front to back, like everything. So much so that was such an experience that artists would put skits in between their tracks on like all of their albums. They'd have an intro, they'd have an outro, they'd have in between skits. Like this was a thing. Like this was a part of the album experience. Now you're in a space where, because you download individual albums, no one does that anymore. No one does skits anymore. No one does that kind of stuff. So they don't do an intro. They don't do an outro. They don't do these kind of things anymore. So that in itself is a big thing, showing the reflection of the times. Another thing too, this is slightly separate from how we digest media, but going hand in hand with the shopping experience, like I was just saying before, and how we access these media. I recently was talking with some family and friends about toy stores and how Toys R Us has vanished. Even that for little kids was an experience for them in terms of where they'd go to pick up their video games, remembering the aisles of the store. It's almost a shame that they even took that away. I almost feel like, I even said this to some of my family, like I felt like they shouldn't even be allowed to do that. Like that should be almost like criminal that they did that. Like, during the recession in 2008, they bailed out car companies, and it's like they should have bailed out Toys R Us, because this is an experience for children that's almost like needed, and it's kind of crazy. But that also was an experience of digesting, those moments of running through the toy aisles, seeing the toys in your hand, going to the store, being able to say, you know what, like, look at this and see new things that where you weren't intending on going to buy in the first place. Now you want those things. So the times have definitely changed. It's definitely different. And some of us who are old enough, we don't realize that younger generation doesn't even know about that, where we have that dual experience to know what it was like when it was there and know what it's like when it's not there, but we can still grab hold of the memories we have when we had it. People nowadays don't even know what that's like to go into a store and have a movie or a music store. The best that they have is probably Best Buy, which is probably holding on by a thread, to be honest with you. And I think I've seen something recently that said they were going to stop selling video game and audio media and all those kind of things and video media, because it's something I don't think want to carry in the stores anymore, because no one's actually buying it. Maybe they'll order it online. But that to me was crazy, because we're getting away from that era where that experience that existed. And like I said, maybe that's something that a lot of people who hasn't grown up with it now, who might be, in that age range of like, say, 30 and below, probably wouldn't even have known it very well. They would have known of it, because if you were 30, you would have been the early 2000s, but you really wouldn't have known it that well, because by the time you were getting of age to really know what's going on around you, maybe 10 years old, it was already starting to phase out. But my point that I was going to get at, because Netflix dropped maybe about 2005 to 2000 and maybe 6, somewhere in that range, but that there's a generation that doesn't even know what that's like. They don't even know that experience. They never even knew having multiple music stores available to go get your music and share that experience. They don't know what it's like to have a bunch of DVD stores or like movie stores or renting from Blockbuster. They don't even know what that's like. I mean, Blockbuster was still going on up until 2011, maybe 2012, but it definitely was shrinking by that time, and it definitely wasn't the same experience because you already had streaming at that time. So it was definitely a thing that a lot of people have just completely missed out. But, you know, definitely put in the comments, you guys, what you guys think, how you guys feel. Tell me your stories, because I feel like a lot of us who are of a certain age bracket love to reminisce on those days as being the good old days. And I don't think we'll ever have those times come again, though I think that they should, especially, once again, I really think when it comes to the toy stores and places like Toys R Us, I think like it's criminal they don't have that, because it's one thing to phase out certain trends for people who experience that when they're a little older, even though you experienced that when you were a teenager, to go into the stores for the music stores and this and that. But really, and all that stuff helped for socializing as well too. But really, little kids not being able to go to a toy store, and it's not the same as Target. Anyone who goes to like a Target, a Walmart, you're not getting the same if you've never experienced Toys R Us, which I think Toys R Us closed roughly somewhere around 2012-ish. And they have some little stores that are popping up now here and there that are like extensions, like they connect Toys R Us to Macy's. Some people buy it as like almost like a franchise type of thing. It's not the same. If you remember the old Toys R Us of yesteryears, they were huge stores that were like bigger than your Costco or your BJ's. Bigger than that, like with aisles that would go down for like, you know, forever, or at least in that same range. Some Costco's are like, not as big as others, but for the most part, maybe in that same range. But you get the idea of what I'm trying to say. Huge, massive warehouse with like maybe several like aisles that would extend. So it'd be like, as far as aisles wide, they would probably be about like 10 aisles wide, at least the main one I used to go to. And then how many aisles deep? You would have 3 aisles deep. So it'd be like one aisle, like a whole row of toys. And then they'd have like a breaking point, then another shelf of row of toys, and a breaking point, and then another shelf. So when you totaled that up, it was like 30 aisles of toys. It was insane. And it was like, you can be in there all day just looking at it, and you knew where the sections were and everything. And I feel that's something that kids really need again. I would say that Amazon will be perfect to buy out the Toys R Us brand, have those big warehouses where you aren't just selling them straight on the floor, but you can also just use that as a warehouse to grab the product when people want it to be shipped. But, you know, that's just me thinking out loud. Anyway, you guys, what are your thoughts? As always, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.